And now we'll hear from Reverend Cindy about your inner dashboard or your owner's manual.
So I thought I'd start with just explaining why our theme for this month is the theme. So last month, we talked about the creative process, how we are participating in creating our felt experience of the world. We discussed how everything in the world begins in the realm of thought, and that our thoughts then are operating in the midst of these universal laws, and that one of the main laws is that thoughts become things. So whether it's spirit that is thinking the entire universe into form, or me thinking this talk into being, first there is a thought. Then the attraction of all the stuff necessary to have that outcome appear, and finally the form appears. Now, Spirit had to actually make an entire universe out of itself, because that's all there was to start. I had a little bit easier task. There were a few things at hand already that I could gather together and tools that I could use to create a talk. In support of using that creative process, throughout the year we offer workshops that teach this 5-step affirmative prayer technique that we call either scientific or spiritual mind treatment. And all those 5 steps, those are designed to help align us with how the system works, right? And clear the path for what we desire to show up in our lives, to make the highest possible good. And so this is how we then use the creative process. So to me, the logical next step was to talk about how do we decide how we want to use that tool, right? How do we decide what it is we want to use this creative directing, this conscious creation in? Well, about when the beginning of my study here, which was over 40 years ago, I learned that basically all of the things that we either want to bring into our lives or those issues we want to let go from our lives fall into 4 main categories. And I found that really useful. And those categories are our health, our wealth, our relationships, and then the guidance and decision-making that we have to do. So that is how the theme came. That's how we changed the words to our opening song to meet that theme. And that's what I want to talk about. So now each of those things probably brings something different for each one of you. I'm not going to try to find all those different viewpoints, all those different ways we can view what health and wealth are. But you're going to do that yourselves as we start talking about it, right? It's going to mean to you what it means. So that's how we fill that in. So let's go. Health. When someone is expecting a new baby, we say, do you want a boy or a girl? Or are you hoping she has your red hair? And almost always the answer is, I don't care as long as he or she or it is healthy. So we put a really high premium on health. That's our first, hello? Okay. That's our first priority, right, is that they be healthy. I've even heard people say, if you don't have your health, none of the rest of this matters. Now, we could talk the rest of the day about what we even should desire in this category, or how to know, are we in good health? How to make a judgment, is that a healthy situation? But for the moment, let's think about health as our vital energy, our mental peace, right? So our vital energy, the vitality that we have to bring into accomplishing and doing the things we want. The word wealth, now it often gets narrowed down to just money, and it brings up ideas about, mansions and yachts and that sort of thing. I see a really obvious problem with that real simple concept every time I see one of those Dan Newland billboards, Dan got me all this money, and I'm thinking, and what had to happen to you first? Are you sure that's wealth, right? So it's a lot more than that. It's a lot bigger than some number after a dollar sign. And I really prefer to think of wealth as our resources. What are the resources we have to accomplish what we want to accomplish in life? Relationships, wow, that covers a huge swath of our life. And we're liable to first think, when we say the word relationship, about our romantic relationships, or at least our family. But relationships go circling out from there, right? I mean, so we have our friends, we have acquaintances that we know from all these various activities we do. We have people we don't actually know that are in service to us as we walk about and do things, or they're back behind the scenes bringing things forward into our lives. And there are people we're never going to meet, never going to see, but we are related to them. And a real good example of that just recently, there's a hantavirus on a ship that I actually saw. I laid eyes on that ship when we were in Antarctica recently. I looked it up. We have a strong memory of the fact that what's happening to people in other places may indeed walk right in and impact our lives, right? So we are related to everyone and everything that's going on. So, and then finally, we have this need for guidance, for help in making our decisions and finding answers to our challenges. And it fits well in phrasing as a concept of wisdom, right? Healthy, wealthy, and wise. That rolls right off the tongue. But you could also talk about clarity. Talk about freedom of choice. We might think of it as asking God, lead me in the paths of, or show me the way. So very briefly, that's the 4 categories, and hopefully without diving too deep into them, each one of you are seeing how most of the things in your life, the things that you want to bring forth in your life, or those things that you want to let go of, will fit into one of these categories. You might also be noticing that as you place them in the place they go primarily, you realize, well, but wait, they're impacting the other areas, right? So we discover pretty quick that although they fall into those categories, everything is interacting. And I spent some time thinking about, now what do I want to use as an example? And I was going to do a hypothetical damage of some sort to myself. And I thought, I really don't want to put any time and words on that. So I'm going to talk about something of the past that's done. But I think it represents this. So many of you know this. A couple of years ago, Paul had heart surgery. It was a total surprise to us. And we had an intervening weekend between diagnosis and surgery, and there was some of this happened in there. And then we had this months of recovery. That's health category, of course, right? Heart surgery, health. Well, think about that now. Healthcare costs are one of the biggest news items we've got going on in our country right now. So surgery certainly can impact your wealth. Your wealth, vice versa, could also impact whether or not you had the surgery, right? And here's a great example of the fact that it's not our own bank account that necessarily measures our wealth. In this case, we have health insurance. It's not all that expensive. We're on Medicare. And we live in a place that has excellent medical care available to us, very handy. Those are resources. Those are part of our wealth. Our wealth is that we could meet this need with ease. Relationships popped up all through this. Paul already had a relationship with a cardiologist. That's why we were even there doing a test. He had a relationship with a surgeon that he drew in and consulted before they ever talked to us. I got to tell you, the CCU nurse that first night was literally controlling the beat of his heart. That's a tight relationship that developed there. I have no clue what her name is anymore, but that was an important relationship. Physical therapists came to our house. Paul's sister flew down and just hung out and did her, was she crocheting or needlepoint, whatever. She does that kind of stuff all the time. And good friends came, because just 2 weeks after this surgery was my 70th birthday, and I thought, that's going to pass by without much fanfare. But I had a party, and it will stay forever in my memory as one of the biggest birthdays I ever had. So you get the picture, right? Guidance. Oh yeah, guidance. So we had that weekend in between. And some of the questions that popped up were, are these folks for real? Is there like some kind of surgery quota they're trying to meet? Should we just leave? Because there was no signs that there was any problem except a Fitbit. His Fitbit had been telling him that there was something going on every now and then. And he maybe actually sort of by the end of the months that went by in between, he had a little flutter and feel, but nothing that he would have reacted to except this machine. Right? And so it was a little hard to believe that with no preparation down the road after all the testing they had done, that they were going to come in with that information. We had a trip planned, a long 6-week, long flights for 11 weeks later. Should we cancel all of that? So we needed guidance on these things. So all of these categories really needed to be working well for life to really function, right? For our lives to function at the highest level. It could be that our whole happy life actually hinged on owning a Fitbit and paying attention to it, and the fact that the doctors actually believed it was a valid measurement that they should look into. What if we'd been uninsured? Would we have gone off and pursued some anomaly on the Fitbit? Maybe not. Would we then have had surgery before the heart attack happened down the road? Might not. And an emergency situation could have bankrupted us, right? So having all these things working is part of a life that's working, even though it appears that something like a heart problem is a problem, right? But it wasn't. It was taken care of. So how do we keep all of this health and wisdom in relationships at their peak of good? I'm going to propose that we think about it like we would think about any smooth running situation. Let's talk about a smooth running car. Cars are, we understand them. Well, I don't really understand them. I know how to use them. Okay. But the difference is that our cars come with a whole dashboard full of information so that we can be looking at and monitoring them, and they get our attention. How many of you are Big Bang Theory fans? Anybody, right? Remember Penny? Penny was running around with her check engine light all the time. Is anyone here trying to drive through life right now with about 3 warning lights blinking at you? Maybe you got some tape and put it over and says, no, that's not happening, everything's fine, right? Are any Pennies in the audience? Okay. So our car comes with a manual. No manual for us. It comes with all these gauges and monitors of what's going on. No obvious monitors going on here. Most of us pay attention to what the car is telling us. If it says, and these days they do actually tell us, you're about to run out of gas, you should do something about that. Maybe not exactly in those terms, but they actually talk to us and get our attention, even if we don't want to pay attention to them. So those are great advantages. And it's not enough of it, as if that's not enough. They realize that those gauges are just giving them information, right? We look at our car, the car is not behaving based on what the gauges say. The gauges are telling what the car is doing, right? It doesn't have to react. It doesn't have to judge itself, right? The gauges aren't judging or anything. Whereas, if maybe what we're using is a mirror, right? Here's my gauge, I'm looking in the mirror, and I'm making some judgments, right? So what would our own dashboard look like? What if we could have this little place that we check? What would it look like? Well, let's go through the 4. When your car flashes something at you, a warning sign, when I was younger, my car had an oil pressure gauge and it had a battery strength gauge. I think the whole dashboard now is taken up with other information, right? So we don't have all those little details, and we can't just see, why is it doing that tiny little bit off? Why does it not look quite like it normally does? Why is it not on the center line? So everything now is coming to us as warnings, right? We don't have the sub-monitoring systems that we used to have. When I grew up, you had to learn how to check the oil. I haven't seen anybody check oil in I don't know how long. I guess they check themselves now, right? But you used to go in there with a dipstick and you clean that off, jug it in again. Is it deep enough? Is it clear? Is the viscosity good? We don't do any of that anymore. We just wait until something says, hey, pay attention. And with our cars, we can take them to get a diagnostic computer test, but other than that, I can't really look and tell you something's about to go wrong. I can just wait till it does. And we do our scheduled maintenance, and otherwise we just wait for the warning lights, right? So a lot of us do that with our bodies and our mental health too, right? We just wait till the warnings flash. We can go in for diagnostics. We can have our scheduled maintenance, right? Everybody's got their, once you're on Medicare, they want to see you twice a year because they figured they can make more money that way. Got to see you often, right? I got to test everything. So we're getting some tests and some information along the way. But really, we wait for those lights to go off or those buzzers to buzz. And then we might think that our body's doing that to us, right? But that's not the case. This is information. This is talking to us. It's asking for attention. They're not our enemy. They're not there to ruin our day. But what do? A lot of the time we ignore it. A lot of the time maybe we try to negotiate with it. I tell you what, I'll eat better and I won't feel that way. Or I'll go out and run tomorrow. Or we negotiate with whatever this little warning symbol is. We go Google it, is this something major? Or is this something I can just ignore or something I can take an aspirin for? Can you imagine Penny, right? Our girlfriend from Big Bang Theory. Penny's driving around. It was months or years. I don't know how long that engine light was on. Sheldon worried about it a lot. So let's admit, the car breaks down and you get it towed and you get there and the mechanic says, well, if you brought this in 6 months ago, I could have fixed it for $50. Wouldn't that be nice to hear from any mechanic? Oh, anyway, just for a relational, I could have fixed it for $50, but now it's going to cost $2,000. It's kind of like in Paul's situation. We did the Fitbit warning instead of the heart attack warning. So we did the 50 instead of waiting for the 2,000, right? The term dashboard is also being used a lot in other areas besides cars, right? I have almost every one of my software programs now comes up, and I've got a dashboard. It's a way to monitor simply what's going on. And in those cases, I get to pick sometimes. I want to measure this and this and this, and I want it to look like this. I want a round gauge, I want a bar graph, I want a pie chart, I want a toggle, whatever. I can tell it how I want it to show me my information. And sometimes, I wish I could do something like that with my health, right? I'll tell you what I want to know about and you give me a way to do it, but we have to invent it ourselves. So if your annual physical and you're waiting for warning lights doesn't suit you, you could devise situations you consider important and create your measurement system for that. Alzheimer's has been in the news a lot lately. And there are some history of that on one side of Paul's family. So we joined something called the Alzheimer's Prevention Trials. Every quarter, they send us a little thing. It says, time for you to take your test. And yep, that's a jack, that's a black one. It's just punching some stuff. But over time, you can go back and measure. Am I continuing to be able to do these tasks? And it's a measure. It's a particular specific gauge that we've added to our health gauges because that one was important to us. We wanted to monitor that. So there may be, maybe yours is the waistband of your favorite pair of slacks, right? That's a gauge. It's a gauge you're using for one part of what matters to you on your health. So it doesn't have to be one of these outside monitors. It may be, maybe you like to count steps. There are a lot of tools we have now that would help us create. But the biggest and most important thing is listening to the body itself. And not going, well, it's only a little bit of tension. It's only a little bit of fatigue. It only hurts now and then. I just need to push through. That's not the answer. That's those inner gauges. They may not show up on any kind of screen anywhere, but those are your measurements. And eventually, the system will escalate if we keep doing that. I'm fine, I'll deal with it later, right? It goes from a little tiny sound to a scream. The truth is your body is not working against you. It's an expression of the life within you. We talked about that, our life vitality. It's our vital force has come into this physical form, and it wants to have our mental and physical self be the highest possible expression. So it is not vanity to take care of our bodies. It's reverence. In Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes says, life is not something happening to us, it's something happening through us. So these indicators, these signals are not punishment, they're communication. So let's roll through the rest of them, because I'm going to go deeper into this troubleshooting idea next week on this. So so if health is warning lights, let's think maybe our wealth, we could think of as kind of like our gas gauge, right? Whether it's the old style, empty to full, or this one, or you've got this many miles left, whatever your gauge looks like. We could use our wealth could fit on something like that, right? And as I noted before, this is really about the whole realm of our resourcing, what we have available to meet our needs. So running on empty, that causes a lot of anxiety for us. But it's also true that if we're constantly monitoring nothing but the gas gauge, that's going to be a problem too. If that's all you're looking at and you're measuring everything by that one thing, you're going to miss some things, including perhaps the traffic in front of you if you're locked into a single gauge as being the one thing that's important to your life. Some people do treat their financial life and their resources like this. They either refuse to look, I don't want to know, or they're totally fixed on it. Neither one is a good example. Yeah, I knew someone that says, I don't ever check my bank balance because it might be bad news. I'm like, this is not financial planning, that's financial wishing. Don't avoid looking at something because it's giving you information just like the gauge. That's all it is, it's information. But we do that sometimes, right? We avoid, we hope, we distract. But the fuel gauge is not about shaming you. It's just about telling you where things stand so you can do something about it, right? If you were hanging on to the first tank of gas you ever got, you would never have gone anywhere or accomplished anything, right? If you're just tightening it tight onto the thing, you gotta get in the flow and just understand I have all the information I need to use this gas to my highest good and get some more, and use it to my highest good and get some more. Same is true for our resources. Because we understand that wealth is not about currency, it's about energy. It's this energetic exchange we have. And it shows up not just as a bank account item, it shows up in the expenses we don't incur. It shows up in the generosity of other people and the things they allow us to do because they gift us with that. It shows up as Medicare and the Orlando health system for us, right? And it is meant to flow. You don't want to hang on to it. You don't want to ignore it. You just want to get the message and manage it. Once we become conscious of it all, then we can get ourselves in alignment with it. And there's a rhythm to that giving and to receiving and trust. And your dash looks like whatever you measure, right? So how you measure your resources are the things that you want to have a measurement for in your dashboard. That's relationships. Relationships, they're kind of like our alignment, right? We have to stay in alignment. If you get out of alignment, you can still drive, but you're putting a lot of wear and tear on your car and you're getting pushed and pulled in directions you might not want to go. And it's kind of like that in our relationships too. We can get out of alignment. We can keep driving, but we may be creating a lot of tension. Now, sometimes the tension is, there is something wrong with them. There's something wrong with that person. We're not getting along right. But from a spiritual perspective, relationships are mirrors. It's what we look into to find out where our consciousness is, right? They show if we get out of alignment with love, out of alignment with compassion, out of alignment with understanding. And it's true for all of the relationships, not the ones all the way from the very center of our home out into the world. Those need to stay aligned. Now, I'm not suggesting that we abandon our boundaries. We talked about that in February about love or ignore harmful behavior. What I am saying, though, is every relationship has feedback for us. Every relationship we experience has some kind of feedback to us. And it's not about our worth. None of that feedback says we are not worthy. It's just a message about where our consciousness is. That's all. And that's all we should ever see it as. And if you really want to know how spiritually evolved you are, spend a holiday with your family. You'll find out. You'll get very clear data. But it's not judging you. Don't forget that. It's just inviting you back into alignment. And finally, there's our inner guidance. Well, what's really like that, metaphorically, is the GPS system, right? GPS is wonderful. It never tells us we're wrong. It just says, sure, I'll go along with that. There are some funny stories out on the internet about GPS gone wrong, but for the most part, my experience with GPS is it just says, where do you want to go? And if you don't do what it told you to do, it doesn't scold you. It doesn't even say recalculating anymore. It just does. And it starts telling you from where you are right this minute, this is how you get where you're going. We had a kind of an experience with that last Saturday, right, on the labyrinth. It was kind of full of people. And the in and the out path are the same path in a labyrinth. Now, most of us knew that, some people didn't, and so they were kind of surprised when they met people coming back at them. And it was a very small one, and so we had to, kind of work our way around. And some people even were worried that they got lost because it was tight, and there are places there where the turns are tight, and it was like, well, now, wait a minute, where was I, and all that. But the point is, the path was always there. The path was always there. The way in and out was always there, and all we needed to do was get on it and go. And that's the way it works, right? GPS doesn't even take you from where it wanted you to be. It takes you from where you are. And I think that this is kind of like the voice of spirit for us, right? Because we all have this inner knowing, right? We have this awareness of the path, and we can get back on the path at any point in time, right? When we feel that nudge, that sense of knowing. But if our lives are too noisy and filled with other things, we might miss the guidance. Because we are free. We are totally free to ignore our GPS. Not only ignore it when it's telling us what to do, right? Always think, I know a better way. I know a shortcut. I can get where I'm going without your help. But ignoring the fact that right there in front of us all the time is this marvelous thing that we can tell our desire to, and it will tell us the best way to get there. It'll tell us alternate ways to get there. You want to go scenic, you want to go cheap, you want to go fast. How do you want to get there? Here, it'll tell you. And we are free to just never consult that. This wonderful step-by-step, turn-by-turn direction to where we want to go. Totally at our own command. That's what we're doing when we ignore this inner knowing, when we don't tap into the guidance that is ours. Okay. So that's the basic idea of having an inner dashboard. This is kind of my owner's manual overview, right? Here's the gauges we have. Here's we are allowed to make some of our own. We have a health warning system. We have a resources empty and full gauge. We have a relationship alignment measurement, and we have a GPS of inner guidance as a basis to work from. Now, next week, I'm going to move more into troubleshooting. We'll go more into some detail about, well, what if you don't like the readings you're getting? Right? First thing is to get the readings and pay attention to them. In the meantime, I invite you, check your dashboard. Find it, enhance it, make peace with it as nothing but a communication of what is going to make life smooth and easy. Don't go at it with fear. Don't think it's giving you judgment. Just be curious. Just be curious. And where is Spirit inviting you? Where do you think there needs to be greater balance in your life, greater flow, greater love, greater trust? How is it speaking to you? Because it's not telling you you're breaking down, it's telling you what you need to be fully, smoothly functioning. And you're fully equipped to listen. And don't forget that here in this organization, we have some licensed mechanics. We call them practitioners. They are up here on the front there. They would be on the back of your bulletin if you had a bulletin with back. Next time you get a bulletin, look on the back. They're all listed there. Basically, these are our licensed mechanics. They will help you understand the readings you're getting and how to change them to better readings if you don't like what you're seeing, how to use them to clear things out of your life. So please consult them and enjoy receiving all this information and figuring out what it means and where you want to change the readings and what you need to do. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for spending this time with us on Spiritual Wisdom Weekly from the Greater Orlando Center for Spiritual Living. If this episode supported you in any way, we invite you to stay connected. Listen again, share it with someone you care about, or simply carry what resonated with you into your week. Until next time, take good care and keep growing in spirit.